So welcome everybody to today's course where we're basically going to be going through an introduction to mindfulness led by myself and on behalf of my company Tranquil Led. So first I'd just like to introduce myself. So I'm Stephen Baines. I'm first of all a fellow human being. I like to point this out because we often forget that in many of our interactions, that we are dealing with another human being, just like us. I'm the founder of Tranquil Led, so we're kind of early stage at the moment, just exploring different things, but we have been kind of going in the background for some time on different elements, such as bringing these type of sessions into companies, as well as other programs such as Search Inside Yourself. I'm a certified mindfulness teacher. I have been for about a year and a half, but I've been practicing for probably around 10-12 years now. So I'm kind of well versed into kind of what this topic is about and how we can actually bring plenty of benefits to yourselves. I'm a psychologist and behaviourist, so this is quite new. I'm exploring this area at the moment, so I've started a master's degree within this topic, due to finish within the next year or two. So basically this is where we start to link in mindfulness into kind of the human behavioural element with things such as habits and so on. It's kind of a really fascinating topic. I'm a coach, so I'm working on the coaching side of things. I really enjoy, you'll see from this presentation that my passion is actually getting the best out of people, seeing people be their best. And the final one, so I'm a Yorkshireman, so you might be able to tell from my accent, I'm actually from the UK and I am in Yorkshire, which is just above the Midlands. It's not far from the north. So why am I actually here today teaching this? It's because I mentioned that I've been practicing mindfulness for quite a long time, like 10-12 years, and I think with mindfulness it comes in one or two forms. Either you kind of discover it because you're curious, or you discover it because you are in a not great place. And you know, there's plenty of benefits that it brings, which we're going to go and explore through today. But fundamentally, I've recognised in my life what impact mindfulness can have, and I can categorically say that I would not be the person that I am today if it was not for me discovering different types of mindfulness, meditation, the link into emotional intelligence and all that kind of thing. It's demonstrated to have a real profound impact, which the science will come to today, but more than anything today, it's for you to learn a bit more about the practices, put some of the things into play, and discover for yourself what you think that you can get from this as well. So if we move on, what I would like to do just before we kick off this session is just invite you to disconnect. So this session shouldn't take too long. It's definitely less than an hour to go through this. I just invite you to disconnect. Put your mobiles away, turn your email off. Just take this time specifically for you. And whether you're doing this as something on your company time to help you to develop, or whether you're doing it just for you, just recognize that it is for you. There may be others that get the benefit out of this if you do kind of take the practices forward and put them into place. But just remember, this is for you. This is developing you as a person. So at least once in this practice as well, I should say that we may be going deep into different types of meditation. So if at all that you do feel uncomfortable, just please do stop. Just bring yourself out, just relax for just a few minutes, just until we have finished the exercise. It's perfectly normal, things may come up, but it's paramount that you look after yourself as the number one. Okay, so we're going to kick off this short practice for just a few minutes to just bring everybody into the room, so mentally as well as physically. So we do this because often our minds are elsewhere. We may be thinking about maybe something that happened last night, or maybe it was a meeting that we just had. Maybe we're excited about what we're going to be having for dinner that evening. And this practice itself, it just helps us to fully arrive. Okay. So to begin with, just please put things away and just find a way to sit in your chair that feels both relaxed and alert. You may either close your eyes or just keep them slightly open, just unfocused, looking downward. And let's start by taking a full, deep breath in through the nose, and then a long, slow breath out through the mouth. Just letting go of any thoughts, feelings. As once again we take another deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. As our breath returns to normal, just feel yourself seated in the chair. Just noticing the contact, the sensations. It may be your feet on the floor, or if your hands on your thighs, it may be your hands on your thighs. Just bringing attention to your breath, just noticing the sensation of breathing in and breathing out. And as we continue, just focusing, just allowing your attention to rest on the breath. If you've noticed that your attention has wandered, simply just return it with kindness to this awareness of the breath. Your thoughts may be coming, your thoughts may be going. Just remaining connected to awareness of the breath, like an anchor for attention. It may be a home base. So once more, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then just opening your eyes fully or just gently raising your gaze and just returning your awareness to the room. Just stretching for a moment. So this exercise is one that you can actually cut parts out of it, but the key point is to create that space between what you was doing before the session and going into the session, or kind of whatever activity you're going to do. Because as I mentioned before, often our minds are distracted, and it means when we do arrive to a certain situation, a certain event, that we're not fully paying attention, and it's paying attention where the real power is. So why is it that we're here? So as I mentioned before, there may be a number of reasons. So we may have discovered this session on the back of needing some kind of intervention and needing some help. We may also have just been curious, so discovered this kind of thing just by thinking, I've heard something about mindfulness and meditation, maybe I just want to explore and learn a little bit more about it. So there may be a number of reasons. But fundamentally, we're going to focus on one for this moment in time. And I'm pretty sure at some time that many of us have felt like this lady does on screen here. She's evidently stressed, worried, anxious. And it's because whilst our intentions may be to be more present, life is seemingly very busy. We are seemingly always switched on. We may find it difficult to stay emotionally balanced at times. Information and distractions that are presented to us, they can cause us greater stress. We have this overwhelm of information more so than ever before. And often we just can't cope. We struggle. Things just get a bit too much. And we often forget about the balance in our life too. The always connected aspect of our world means that we often lose time to focus on the things that we love, the people that we love. And this often creates unhappiness, frustration, sometimes resentment. And it means that sometimes we may make rash decisions, things that we haven't thought through properly and that we're just acting simply on impulse. So in the sessions that I teach, I like to refer to this article, to this study. So there's some stats just around this complex world that we live in. And if we read some of the data back, so this survey was done with hundreds of thousands of leaders throughout the world. And this data is just a summarization relating to this topic. So of those who responded, 47% of people's time on average was spent mind-wandering. 70% of those respondents said that they was regularly unable to be attentive in meetings. And you know, we've all been there, even not in meetings, just in conversation, that we've been talking and then we've asked a question and then the person we're talking to is like, oh, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. You know, we've all been there. Like, typically it's eyes glued to the phone. The most remarkable one that I always point out for me is this bottom one about this 2%. And I'll go on to in a moment why this is relevant. And this 2% is about developing ourselves, about becoming better people, learning new skills. And of those who responded to the survey, only 2% of them said that they found time regularly to do things like we're doing here today. Quite remarkable, isn't it? Now, the remarkable thing about this study is that it was a number of years ago that this study was conducted. It was actually in 2010. And if I look at all of these and think about how the world has changed, this was before the proliferation of mobile. This was just as Facebook was starting to take off. Instagram barely existed. So now we have that social element, that social information, that social pressure. What do you think these numbers potentially look like? It'll be an interesting balance because naturally we have technology now that helps us a little bit with this space. But you know, it's long been reported that the social element is one of the things that's kind of grinding us down, that's increasing stress. So one other thing that hasn't been mentioned so far is that we're struggling to find meaning within our lives. So that purpose. So one of my passions, one of the reasons why I do so much of the coaching and kind of looking at the psychology and behaviour is because I've recognised in my own life what the benefit of finding our purpose is. And many of us don't know that. Many of us just go out into our 9 to 5 and just come home and just rinse and repeat. And you know, that is perfectly fine. For a lot of us, for many of us. But the reality is that without that purpose, we may be somewhat drifting. And some of us, I would say probably the majority of people who are watching this session, find that that isn't actually what they want. So life is often personally challenging, sooner or later. We ask the question, what is really important to me? Is what I am doing meaningful? Many people may feel lost or constantly driven by day-to-day challenges. We have a lack of space to truly sit back and reflect and enjoy. So what does this all mean to us in our daily lives? And what we're describing here is that we're tending to operate on autopilot for the majority of our days. What this means is that we're not present. We're either thinking of something in the past or in the present or in the future. So just have a think. However you've arrived at this session today, can you vividly remember every part of that journey? So if you was driving to get to your office, do you remember the gear changes or the traffic lights that you stopped at? If you was on the public transport, do you remember people that you saw? Even including those who were at home, do you remember your last conversation with your loved one? The unfortunate reality is that we do tend to just do stuff without actually paying attention to it. And it's in paying attention that we see some real true beauty. We really engage with people, we learn, we connect, we empathise. So when I drafted these slides, I was listening to an audiobook by Dr. David Eagleman, and the book was on the brain, the story of you. And it's fascinating as he spends a lot of time talking about this topic of autopilot, talking about how incredible achievements have become autopilot for some people. So whilst the majority of the things that we do, we have no conscious awareness of, just because we're doing things mentally elsewhere, we also have to consider that there may actually be a value for a form of autopilot as well. So we're now going to go into the science and the skeptics. So this is really important because mindfulness and meditation as a topic has a lot of connotations that go with it. You know, meditation is traditionally religious. You can also say that some of the benefits that are reported, many people may look at them and dismiss them, like how is it possible that this is the case? But it's in the science where the power lies. And I'll go on to the details of this shortly. But what we're essentially preaching here is that in many cases, what is seen as hoodoo is actually not. It has a lot of power. There are different origins of the practices that we will talk to. However, we are conscious that many of you, this are coming from the beginning. And you may be working in business, you may be working in different areas, engineering or so on. And the program that I teach, the Search Inside Yourself program, that is founded on hard facts, on numbers. And that's where we're going to go today. So in this space, there is a profound science which sits underneath the practices. Evidence that they do actually deliver a benefit to our lives. So if this video works, if not, I will basically make sure that there is a link within the video. So Dan Harris, he's a TV correspondent, and he was a big skeptic around mindfulness. And back in 2004, live on TV, Dan had a panic attack. This led to him seeking guidance, counselling, and help from various mental health professionals because he didn't feel as though he could continue his career. He discovered the benefits of meditation and begun to work on the challenges he faced around his professional career. So, for instance, some examples were aggressive competitiveness, and he also had personal issues around things like drug and alcohol abuse. So in this video, and also in his book 10% Happier, Dan talks about how the practices have benefited him. So we'll play the video, and there'll be a link as well in the course. So if it doesn't work, just watch the video externally. It's a great video. Oops.
There's no way a fidgety and skeptical news anchor would ever have started meditating were it not for the science. The science is really compelling. It shows that meditation can boost your immune system, lower your blood pressure, help you deal with problems ranging from irritable bowel syndrome to psoriasis. And the neuroscience is where it really gets sci-fi. There was a study out of Harvard that shows that short daily doses of meditation can literally grow the gray matter in key areas of your brain having to do with self-awareness and compassion, and shrink the gray matter in the area associated with stress. There's also a study out of Yale that looked at what's called the default mode network of the brain. It's a connected series of brain regions that are active during most of our waking hours when we're doing that thing that human beings do all the time, which is obsessing about ourselves, thinking about the past, thinking about the future, doing anything but being focused on what's happening right now. Meditators not only turn off the default mode network of their brain while they're meditating, but even when they're not meditating. In other words, meditators are setting a new default mode. And what's that default mode? They're focused on what's happening right now. In sports, this is called being in the zone. It's nothing mystical. It's not magical. You're not floating off into cosmic ooze. You are just being where you are. The cliche in self-help circles is being in the now. You can use that term if you want, but because it's accurate, it's slightly annoying, but it's accurate. It's more just being focused on what you're doing. And the benefits of that are enormous. And this is why you're seeing these unlikely meditators now, why you're seeing the U.S. Marines adopting it, the U.S. Army, corporate executives from the head of Ford to the founders of Twitter, athletes from Phil Jackson to many, many Olympians, scientists, doctors, lawyers, school children. There's this sort of elite subculture of high achievers who are adopting this because they know it can help you be more focused on what you're doing, and it can stop you from being yanked around by the voice in your head. My powers of prognostication are not great. I bought a lot of stock in the company that made Palm Pilot back in 2000, and that didn't go so well for me. But having said that, I'm going to make a prediction. I think we're looking at meditation as the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told people that you went running, they would say, who's chasing you? Right now, if you tell people you meditate, and I have a lot of experience with telling people this, they're going to look at you like you're a little weird most of the time. That's going to change. Meditation is going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like exercise, brushing your teeth, and taking the meds that your doctor prescribes to you. These are all things that if you don't do, you feel guilty about. And that is where I think we're heading with meditation, because the science is so strongly suggestive that meditation can do really, really great things for your brain and for your body. The common assumption that we have, and it may be subconscious, is that our happiness really depends on external factors. How was our childhood? Have we won the lottery recently? Did we marry well? Did we marry at all? But in fact, meditation suggests that happiness is actually a skill, something you can train just the way you can train your body in the gym. It's a self-generated thing. And that's a really radical notion. It doesn't mean that external circumstances aren't going to impact your happiness. It doesn't mean you're not going to be subject to the vagaries of an impermanent entropic universe. It just means you are going to be able to navigate this with a little bit more ease.
Yeah, so it's always a fascinating watch, the Dan Harris, particularly given where he come from. The fact that what you're hearing from here is 15 years ago, he was one of the biggest skeptics out there. I remember one of his other videos was him basically talking about how if he was told that in 10 years' time he was going to be an advocate of mindfulness, he'd have spat his beer out all across the bar. And now you've got him here talking about what he's realised, what he's seen, what he's discovered, his practices. So what we're going to do now is go into a little bit of the science, and also some areas that Dan mentioned there, such as the amygdala hijack and the default mode network. So the first one up is the amygdala hijack. So he spoke to things like this, default mode, and the impact that meditation practices can help to actually decrease the activation of these kind of areas of the brain. So another area to explore is this being triggered. So I'm sure that we can all relate to this, that we've experienced some kind of frustration, even anger, rage, based on an email that you've received from somebody. So Daniel Goleman coined this phrase that's in the top left of the screen here, the amygdala hijack, following a series of experiments that he conducted around people's brain activity when they are triggered by something. And by being triggered, what we mean is something that causes us to become incredibly frustrated, to lose control. So as I mentioned, I'm sure that we've all been there. I'm sure that we can all relate to something that has incredibly angered us. And what typically happens is that the amygdala takes over the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex is the rational part of our brain. This is the part of our brain that helps us to make decisions. So, I'm going to eat healthy food instead of unhealthy food. It's that rational judgment part. And what the amygdala is our fight or flight response. Fight or flight centre of the brain. It's essentially our lizard brain. It's the oldest part of our brain, and consequently it's quite unevolved. And the amygdala, when we're triggered, when we're sensing danger, it hijacks that prefrontal cortex, because the last thing that we want when we are in grave danger, so say that a wild animal was to come charging into your room right now and start shredding things up, the last thing that you would want your brain to be doing is starting to think about the pros and cons of certain actions that you're going to take. So the amygdala stimulates action. Now, where this is a problem is that I mentioned about this part of our brain not typically evolving. If we go back right to the start of the session where we started to talk about some of the social stimulus that we experience, so things like likes on Instagram and Facebook and people commenting on our posts and emails that we receive from people, what we often find is that we get triggered by things like that in the same manner or very similar manner to what we would do if we was actually in grave danger. So back in prehistoric days, in maybe even obviously a lot closer than that, this would have actually been a really useful part of the brain, because it would have protected us. It would have potentially saved our lives. And don't get me wrong, it still has that role today. But the key is the balance has shifted. So the activities that our brain perceives to be risky essentially hasn't changed. It's still seeing these, what are actually low risk things, to be ones that could actually impact our survival. So the remarkable thing about the experiments that Goldman conducted was that meditation and mindfulness activities were found to actually help us to gain better control of our amygdala, thus reducing basically our tendency to lash out and later regret it. And what some of the things that he and other experimenters found was that when we become triggered, there's a time period by which our amygdala kind of remains hijacking the prefrontal cortex. It was around 26, 28 minutes. So what we often find when we do get triggered by that email, that text message, we may respond to it, and then 26, 28 minutes later, we may find ourselves thinking, like, maybe I didn't mean that. Maybe they meant something else. Like, having read that email back, I kind of understand what they're saying now. But it's too late. You've already sent the email. You've already sent the text message. And there's potentially this ongoing round of anger, because then you may be angered that other person, and so on. But the key message here is the role that mindfulness and meditation can play in helping us to control this. It's about creating space between the stimulus and the response, and having that time to sit and reflect. So there was another study as well that we're going to look at. So this is journaling. And what we mean here is not journaling in the traditional sense of like many of us may have done when we was younger, I'm going to keep a diary about the things that go on in the day and areas like that. It's very similar, but the key thing with this journaling is that we're doing it in a self-reflective way, and we are constantly writing, non-stop. Even if we run out of things to say, we are literally writing something like, I've got nothing to say, I've got nothing to say, I've got nothing to say. Because what we're trying to do is tune into our subconscious thoughts, trying to get things that, they're not at just this high superfluous level. We're trying to get deep into what we're really thinking. So a couple of studies here, Berfane and Pennebaker, they found an experiment that, this one was with people who were seeking jobs. They had 3 groups of people. They asked one group all 3 were job seekers, and they asked one group to basically self-reflective journal specifically about their job search and how they found that day of job searching. The next group, they asked for just general journaling, just about their job search. How's it going? How's your day? And the third group, they asked them not to do anything. What they found is that the first group who did the self-reflective journaling about their job search that specific day, they actually found a job a lot quicker than what the other 2 groups did. There was another study as well out of the University of Missouri, and this found that journaling, just self-reflective about how that day has gone, just for 2 or 3 consecutive days, increased the level of happiness across the participants. And this study sample wasn't small. It was quite a sizable study that was focused on here. So this one describes the power of journaling. We're going to come on to an exercise shortly to allow you to do some journaling. So Dan also spoke about the default mode network that meditation practices can help to decrease the activation of. So what I'm going to do is just describe a little bit about what this is. So the default mode network, it's the part of our brain that is essentially responsible for things like self-referential thinking, rumination, mind wandering. And this network is active by default. It was actually found in this experiment just by waiting for experiments to start, like whilst people were hooked up to the MRI machines. And what they also found, because they followed this train of thoughts about the default mode, they actually found that during meditation, the default mode network was actually less active. They also took it a step further. They actually had a balance of experienced meditators and non-meditators, and they compared the 2. And what they found that it's not actually just during meditation, but it's actually through continued practice as well, that you can actually reduce the amount of activation of your default mode network. So essentially the amount of mind wandering that you do, the self-referential thinking and rumination, all that can begin to reduce. So you may be asking, okay, so what do I do? Okay, I kind of get the science, I kind of get the logic behind this, but what is it that I can actually do? And what we are preaching here in many cases may still be seen as hoodoo. There are different origins of the practices that we talk to, but, given that people are coming from different backgrounds here, what I just implore you to do is to just try, just to see how it impacts you, how it benefits you. And the key message with some of these things we are going to go through when we go into the practices is that if you don't like one specific practice, you don't have to do it. There are so many different practices. Like the things we're going to go through today is just a small subset of them. I do implore you, I'll say at the end, to check out my YouTube channel, because on there I have over 50 different types of meditation, journaling practice, visualization, all sorts of things on there just to try out. So what we're going to do now is just go into some of the practices and just see how you find them. So we're going to do 4. Well, we're not going to do the first one, but the first one I'm going to talk to, because this one is very important. So the first one is listening. The second one is a guided meditation. So this is similar to what we did right at the start of the session. We're going to talk through a meditation. We're going to actually go and put one into practice in a bit more detail than what the last one was. We're going to explore a little bit of journaling there as well. And we're also going to do a breathing micro practice. And we'll say why this is different, but briefly, we're just conscious that you can't always sit and meditate. There's a time and a place for that. And the breathing micro practice just allows you to do things at any moment in time that you need. It's a bit of a difference between how we might go to the gym as a dedicated exercise versus just doing a few push-ups in the morning. It's kind of that kind of difference between the two. So, active listening. In the programs that I teach, active listening is one of the core components of it. Because often when we're talking to people, we're talking to say our next thing. Listening to say our next thing, sorry. And that's quite disconnecting, because what it means is that we're missing a whole load of information that is being presented to us. Because all we're doing is we're thinking about what we're going to say next. Whereas if we just sit, if we just pay attention just directly to that person for a period of time, we will get a lot more out of that conversation, and that relationship will prosper. I remember when we first did this exercise in a company that I worked for, it was presented to the entire group. We had a bunch of senior leaders, individual contributors as well, and one of the senior leaders reflected back on this exercise. It was a consulting organisation, so primarily what we do is actually voice our opinion. That's what we were primed to do. But he came back after the exercise and said, that is one of the most difficult things that I've ever done. And what the exercise was essentially 3 minutes of active listening, where one person just speaks uninterrupted for 3 minutes. And the other person has to then reflect back on that conversation at the end, and then you switch places. And he said the thing is, he's so used to giving his opinion that he just realised, I've been missing a whole load of detail here, because as the conversation was going on, questions were coming up in his mind as to what he wanted to ask. So this is naturally something that we can't put into practice right now, but what I want you to do is take it away as homework. All you have to do is just listen intently to the person that you're speaking to. Just give them time and space to speak. So the next one is a guided meditation. It's called a focused attention practice. So what we're going to do is just dive right in and do this as a guided meditation. So just to ensure everyone is comfortable, this is going to last for somewhere between 5 and 7 minutes. And just remember, as we said at the start of the session, if you feel uncomfortable, just bring the attention back to the room and either take a moment to just explore a bit or just wait for the exercise to finish. So let's start by finding a posture that feels both relaxed and alert. You may want to have your feet on the floor, your hands on your thighs. And you may either close your eyes or keep them slightly open, looking downward, just a few feet in front of you. As you take a deep breath in through the nose, just allow the spine to lift and the shoulders to relax as you now breathe out. So let's begin by connecting with your intention in doing this practice. You may want to develop healthier ways to relate to stress. You may want to be more focused and productive, or to be a more skillful leader. Or in fact, you may not actually have any clear intention. You may just be interested in learning more about meditation, or more about yourself. Now, bring your attention to your breath. You may notice a movement of the abdomen or chest, or the sensation of the air passing at the tip of your nose, as you continue taking a deep breath in and out. As you continue breathing, you may notice a sensation in the throat, or maybe a sense of the whole body breathing. Wherever the sensation is most vivid for you, just allowing your attention to rest there. And for the rest of this practice, think of this sensation as your anchor point, your anchor breath, if you like. So whenever the mind wanders, just bring it back to this feeling of breathing. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. As we take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth, you may explore counting each exhale from 1 to 10. If you notice your mind wander, just come back to 1. Can you be curious and kind with yourself, even as you bring your attention back to your breath? If your attention does wander, as soon as you notice, just simply return to this awareness of the breath, gently, kindly. Just allowing the breath to be a kind of home base or anchor for awareness. Your thoughts may be coming. Your thoughts may be going. There's no need to push away or chase after them. Just if your attention does wander, just simply returning to the right here, to the right now. So now let's sit quietly here for a minute or so, making just the right amount of effort to follow the breath, or even just sit here being aware of whatever arises for you. So now just gently bringing your awareness back into the room as we just take a final deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then just gently open your eyes and just stretch in any way that you like. And the thing with this practice is that I'd invite you not to necessarily think of this practice as being over, but just to be curious about what paying attention may actually mean for you going forward. Just be a little bit curious. So the next exercise that we do is going to be a journaling exercise. So we've been through some of the science and the research around this, so just as a reminder, there are profound benefits with this. But once again, I'll also say that not every exercise that we do today is going to appeal to you. Everyone may do, but some may not. So what we need is a pen and paper or tablet and tablet pencil. And what we're going to ask you to do is to just journal, to just write non-stop for around about a minute for every prompt that we have. And just remember, as we said earlier, if you do have nothing to write, just simply write. I have nothing to write. I have nothing to write. I have nothing. Just keep repeating until something comes up. Because just remember, thoughts may come, thoughts may go. This is where we begin to explore ourselves a little more. So, the prompts. So the first one is, I feel most energized when. The second one is, I couldn't imagine living without. And the third one, if I could talk to my teenage self, the one thing I would say is. So if you go ahead, take a minute per prompt, and we'll come back in 3 minutes altogether. Okay, so if you just finish the sentence that you are writing, I think we gave you a little bit longer there, but I do believe in the power of this exercise. So hopefully you was able to use that time to your advantage here. So we're now just going to go into an element of self-reflection for this. So do things like have a think back to the meditation that we did. So how did you find that? Where do you think it could be useful in your day-to-day life? As well, the journaling, maybe have a look back through some of the things that you was writing. Just reflect if there's any surprises there that come up. So if you just spend 30 seconds or so just going through these, and then we'll come back in the room and continue as we are. Okay, so just something to think about here was I mentioned about Dr. David Eagleman's book that I was working through when I drafted this content. And in the book, David refers to the fact that our brains are continuously churning through data and building ideas. And when we get the aha moment, it's often found that our brains have actually been formulating these ideas for a long time. And if we reflect on the practice that we've just done, so journaling can help us to tease those ideas out and to explore them a little bit further. So similar, guys, to the coaching work that I do as well, that the coaching helps us to tease out some of the thoughts and ideas that we have. So far what we've done, we've gone through an introduction. We spoke about the reason why mindfulness is an important thing. We've spoken about some of the science, the skeptic's view. We've put some of it into practice. And now is where we're going to go and talk about the benefits. So in these benefits, we just have to remember that they are extending the scientific base that we previously explored. But if we look a bit closer at some of the things that we see and do in the world around us, you could actually recognize where some types of mindfulness practice actually already exist. So to start this off, there was a study in 2014. It was a Harvard Business Review study led by Jack Zenger and Joseph Folkman. So this was 300,000 leaders, managers and employees all took part in this survey just to understand what the critical skills were within business and what had the greatest impact on success. And remarkably, 6 out of the top 8 skills were noted to be emotional intelligence related. 2 of them were IQ related. So if you just think about the importance, so emotional intelligence is about the way that we connect with people, it's about the way that we understand ourselves, it's about core leadership skills, communication skills, all that kind of thing. So it's that level of importance that through 300,000 leaders, managers and employees, these came out top over any kind of intelligence skills, which stressing the importance of things like the stuff we're going through today as to why it's really important. And as we mentioned right back at the start of the course, mindfulness and meditation has been proven to develop emotional intelligence, to help us to connect better, to understand ourselves more, and to move forward with our ideas. So some of the things, as we mentioned there, is the development of leadership skills. So when we translate these benefits to emotional intelligence, we can essentially talk to 3 key areas. So the first is the development of this leadership skill. So mindfulness helps us to become better leaders. It helps us to focus intently on a person, a situation or a task, just as we've spoken to with the active listening exercise that you'll be practicing for your homework. It introduces an ability for us to respond more appropriately to some of the triggers and to become more empathetic. So if we think about that amygdala hijack that we spoke through, the default mode network, with the amygdala, meditating has been proven to help us to take control of that, to reflect on the situation before we respond, With the default mode network, it was proven that by practicing meditation, we can actually reduce the amount of mind wandering that goes on within our brain. The next one is about performance. So Daniel Goleman, he refers to various studies on the impact of emotional intelligence on performance. He often refers to the focused mind in these studies, and additional studies have also been conducted on a concept that we call flow state. So this is where, if you think you may have been doing a task at some time, and time has just flew by. You know, the next time you look at your watch, 2 hours have passed, and you've done so much on that task, and that's flow state. You may often read about professional athletes as well, adopting their own mindfulness practice to get them in the zone. Look at people like Usain Bolt, what he does before he used to go out on the track. He used to have a set routine. That is a form of mindfulness. You don't have to be practicing meditation to be practicing mindfulness. And also, world-class performers, so people such as Tim Ferriss and the people that he speaks to, Joe Rogan, they often speak to their own personal practice as a key part of their own success and try and tease that out of other people as well to understand what they do that may be different to what they do. The other one is happiness. So if you remember right at the start, we had that picture of that family, and that we often lose the meaning, the purpose, the connection. And what we mean by this happiness is that we often lose sight of some of the things that are really close to us. So things that we're really grateful for. Positive social relationships. Being optimistic over pessimistic. Forgiving people. Savouring just the little joys in our life. And as we mentioned before, meaning, purpose. All of which add to happiness and well-being within our lives. And often we create a greater ability to connect to people when we're happy. And mindfulness is a way that we can do that. Specifically gratitude. So personally, I've been playing around with a gratitude journal. So this is just something that I've kind of put together on my phone, where every morning I'm basically given a prompt. And I just write 3 bullets, what I'm grateful for. Today I am grateful for, ... And at the time of recording this presentation, I'm actually recording this during the pandemic, COVID. And one thing I've been teaching in all the classes that I've gone through is the importance of gratitude in this time. Because if we become so bogged down in everything that is going wrong at this time, the illness, the deaths, the job losses, then we won't get out of this in a good mental state. Whereas what we actually have in our lives is a lot to be grateful for. So things like, for myself, for instance, I'm getting to work from home. So I'm getting to spend a lot of time with my wife and daughter, much more than I normally would. I'm able to go out and get my regular exercise in the morning because my schedule is a lot more predictable. And then there's even the basics. You know, I've got a roof over my head. I've got food on the table. I've got a bed that I can sleep in. You know, things that a lot of people in this world don't actually have, that we may lose the sight of. And gratitude is a mindfulness practice. Things just stating something we're grateful for. That itself is helping us to bring more happiness into our life. So we're nearing the end of this session now. So I just wanted to do a little bit of a reflection around the things that we've covered off today. So what we have is a situation, we've got a practice and a study relating to 3 of the 4 areas that we went through, just to allow us to connect the dots, just to essentially bring these practices home. So the first one, naturally, listening. Listening isn't on here because, well, we wasn't able to practice the listening exercise, but I want you to take it away and do it as homework. I think we all know when we can listen more. I think we all know the situation, we all know the practice of listening, or we've talked through how give the person the space. So the breathing practice, which we've done 2 already, 2 types of breathing practice, but we'll also do the micro practice in a moment, just to kind of demonstrate something short for you to work with. So the idea here is it's useful for situations where we may feel as though we're losing control. So if we think about that amygdala hijack that we spoke through, that Daniel Goleman coined, that he discovered, this exercise we're going to do is going to help us to combat that, to give us the space between the stimulus and the response. So the next one down is the guided meditation. So it's useful for us to create space in our lives. Studies on Matthew Ricard have been groundbreaking in this space. So he's a monk, and he's really profound within this space, being involved in lots of different studies. He's actually been declared as the happiest man in the world just through his practice. So the guided meditation that we went through is just one example of that. There are many. And then journaling. So this is useful to allow us to reflect, to create, to allow us to essentially form some clear thinking. So if you think back to the study we went through with the job seekers, it helped people to find a job quicker by doing self-reflective journaling. So this is kind of bringing the practices home here, that all we've done is just covered a few little glimpses of these. But as I mentioned, there are many, many out there. So in terms of a resource, I do implore you to check out the Tranquil Leg YouTube channel. They are all entirely free. There's around about 50 meditations. They are added to weekly as well. Different types of practices. And as I've explored throughout this, the key is finding what works for you. If you try a type of practice and you don't like it, then just leave it. That's fine. Just go and try something else. Just don't give up, because there are a lot of different practices. Like if we think of mindfulness, in a presentation that I did just a couple of weeks ago, we had a grid up showing all the different types of exercise. It's things like walking. So going out to a forest, to a street, to a park, just paying attention to some of the things around you, just leaving the headphones and the phone at home. There's eating. You can mindfully eat. There's the meditation, naturally. There's cooking, bathing. The key thing is with mindfulness is that it's about paying attention to what it is that you're doing. It's about being aware, just as Dan Harris had mentioned. And you can be aware doing absolutely anything. One of the real benefits that I've discovered is with running. If you practice mindful running or mindful exercise, you're paying attention to all the different feelings and sensations in the body. So your form improves massively because you're understanding where the little niggles are potentially occurring. So as I mentioned with that first one that was on the list there, we're going to basically go through just a breathing exercise. And this is a very short exercise, and as I've mentioned, it's just to emphasize this point about, you don't have to take 10 minutes out of your day to practice mindfulness, and especially if we're in a situation where we've been triggered, we're not always able to practice. So this is an important exercise just to kind of allow us to get some space. So let's begin this practice. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 deep breaths. They're going to be in through the nose, they're going to be out through the mouth. And after each in-breath, we're going to do something, which I will describe. So I will actually go through. So first breath is a complete yet gentle attention to the process of breathing. The second breath is how we then let the body relax. Then on the third breath, we just ask ourselves, what is most important at this given moment in time? So let's put it into practice. So if we just start by taking a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth, just bringing complete yet gentle attention to the process of breathing. So now, second breath, in through the nose and out through the mouth as we just let the body relax. Now the third breath, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just ask yourself, what is important right now? So that took all of 20-25 seconds. And naturally you can get the picture that you can shorten this as you need to given that situation. But the fundamental message of this exercise is to just take deep breaths, to distance yourself from whatever that stimulus is that you faced, whatever it is that has angered you. Just get some space between what has happened and what your response is going to be. Because by getting space, your response will be much more real. It won't be the amygdala taking over the prefrontal cortex. You'll have been given space to breathe. So that's essentially it for the session today. I just wanted to close on this message. Wherever you are on your journey of mindfulness meditation, just remember that you've got this. There are so many different practices out there to benefit so many different people with different interests. So just remember that you can explore at whatever pace you need and in whatever manner you need to as well. But whatever situation you find yourself in, you have got this. You can get out of it. Whether that's some stress, whether that's some illness, or whether that's just looking for an idea to move forward. Remember, you've got this. So I've mentioned throughout about some resources. If you check out the YouTube channel Tranquil Lead, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Stephen Baines. I share a lot of material, a lot of different articles that may be useful. As well, one app that I've been using a lot, so I previously had the Headspace app for meditation. That was my go-to. It was great. You get a free 10-day trial if you want to try that one out. But I've actually switched over to using the Sam Harris Waking Up app. And this I've found to be really good. It seems to go down a level deeper. You also get an introductory trial of, I think, around about 6 days in that. But yeah, I do kind of implore the Waking Up app at the moment. I think it is a really good app. Thank you again for tuning in. Really appreciate you staying around, kind of watching this video. I hope it's been of use. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn. Drop me a message. Happy to answer any questions about any of this. Thank you.